The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Sorry, Tyler, we're gonna break your rule here. Fight Club, a staple of the Literally Me movie sphere, has met unparalleled longevity and acclaim. The audience is taken along the journey of a disillusioned man dubbed the Narrator and his transformation from a weak passive NPC to attaining power and agency over his world. With unwavering interest and controversy still surrounding the film, Fight Club's influence strikes a chord much deeper than other movies. People are drawn to Fight Club in a tremendously robust manner and passionately relate to it for many reasons that may not be obvious or explainable to themselves. Today we'll analyze this phenomenon and uncover the truth behind why Fight Club is literally me. The movie starts with a depiction of the narrator, a lonely subordinate insomniac slowly dying away in his menial job and meaningless life. Left in a cycle of mental turmoil, the narrator finds refuge from his suffering through different disease support groups. While he doesn't actually have the diseases of the support group he attends, he finds solace in the shared sorrow of his and the attendees' depleted existence. Ironically, the narrator does suffer from a different kind of disease though. His disease is not characterized by an official medical term or support group, but one that operates on a level deeper than the physical: nihilism.
Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives.
Nihilism, as defined by Oxford Learner's Dictionary, is the belief that life has no meaning or purpose. To further aid our analysis, the word disease, as defined by Britannica Encyclopedia, is any harmful deviation from the normal structural or functional state of an organism. Purpose and fulfillment are necessary aspects of the human experience. However, the world of the narrator has left him completely devoid of this, thereby infecting him with the disease of nihilism. The narrator lives without any meaning to his life. He is a mere cog in the machine of corporate America, subjecting him to work as a docile laborer, churning every bit of his life and health out of him. Likewise, he lacks any real human connection to others. Everyone in his life is described as a single-serving friend, offering him no value, thus killing his biological drive for human-to-human relationships. With a bleak existence so vividly depicted, it's not hard to see how we think that the narrator is literally me. We're living in one of the most comfortable yet depressing times, one of the most interconnected yet lonely times in human history. So many of us, as Tyler Durden says, are stuck working jobs we hate to buy things we don't need. We share the narrator's lack of purpose, his lack of fulfillment, and often come to accept that our lives are just a means to the inevitable end, creating hollowed and depressed people. Similarly, the advancement of technology has us glued to our smartphones, laptops, and TVs, carrying out our human-to-human interaction via the medium of a screen. This, in turn, distances us from authentic human connections. We can just swipe on a screen to find single-serving love nowadays. We prop up the facade of our friends through likes and follower counts while sacrificing the real-world communal experiences core to our instincts. Through all this, modernity has affected many of us with the same case of the narrator's nihilism, and we, much like the narrator, don't have a support group or antidote to the illness. In fact, we just have the opposite. Through his dreary existence, the narrator can find some momentary satisfaction through the acquisition and consumption of material possessions sold to him by the same corporations, keeping people like him confined within the shackles of nihilism. He spends his little free time shopping for unnecessary luxury items, all in an effort to feel fulfilled.
I was close to being complete.
In reality, he is just a hamster running in a never-ending wheel. Not only has the narrator lost all sense of purpose and value in his life, but those very ideals have been corrupted. Power structures have hijacked the signifiers of value, attributing them to instead different luxury goods, superficial status markers, and temporary hedonistic pleasures. This has created a world in which humans such as the narrator are striving for false metrics of purpose and fulfillment that only provide short-term relief from their nihilism. Think of this as giving painkillers to a cancer patient. The disease still exists, it's only the pain caused by the disease that momentarily subsides. This corruption of value subjugates people into a drive of hyperconsumption in order to fulfill their purpose. As Tyler so elegantly puts it later on in the film, we are consumers. We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession. We are hooked on buying the newest gaming consoles, makeup lines, and sneakers. We have different ties for every day of the week and buy dresses for one prom or wedding night only to throw them away the next day. Not because the dresses are useless, but because their signifier value has been destroyed after that one night. We judge ourselves by the name on our clothes, the number next to our phone version, and attribute our value and fulfillment based on these material signifiers. This ultimately fails to leave us fulfilled. Rather, it just momentarily satisfies us until the next set of products hit the market. To make matters worse, we fear the social ostracization and ridicule of not possessing these false markers of value. We fear a world where our follow to unfollow ratio isn't respectable, or where we don't have a nice enough apartment because it's an indication that we aren't valuable. It is this fear that keeps us, just like the narrator, trapped in and powerless over this culture of hyperconsumption. We, like the narrator, are in a double bind. We live a life too complacent to die in, but too nihilistic to truly live. Introduce Tyler Durden. The suave, handsome maverick appears on an airplane as the narrator wakes up from a catastrophic dream. Instantly, the audience is privy to Tyler's general cynicism towards the world around him. He quickly points out how airlines will administer oxygen to get people high during a mid-air emergency to restore a false sense of security. Moments like this are littered throughout the movie. From Tyler's conversation with the narrator at Lou's tavern, to his speech before his fight with Lou, and his infamous soliloquy in the mid-part of the movie,
You were the all-singing, all-dancing crap at the world.
it's clear that Tyler rejects the values perpetuated by this consumer-driven society in favor of a new outlook, one that holds the antidote to the narrator's nihilism.
Things you own end up owning you.
This quote serves as a perfect gateway into our analysis of Tyler Durden, beginning with his mirroring of the late Friedrich Nietzsche's writing on the concept of slave morality. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the foremost philosophers of the 19th century and existential school of thought, argues that the ideals of value and purpose, once strongly rooted by religion, have been disabled due to the ever-growing secular nature of Western society. Ultimately, Nietzsche argues that the dissolution of these value systems has created a void in the Western society's conception of meaning and purpose in life. This vacuum has been filled with cultural, political, and economic power structures who institute signifiers of value in order to capitalize off and enslave the masses under their umbrella of authority.
Like so many others, I had become a slave to the IKEA nesting.
Enslaved to their lifestyle obsessions, the endless cycle of nihilism spurned by the supplanting of values leads to what Nietzsche calls the era of the last man. People have lost their drive and aspiration to take agency over their lives, opting instead for docile comfortability and luxurious indulgence. Moreover, virtues such as individualism, strength, and creation are scorned, as we have entered a society where values such as conformity, victimhood, and impotence are elevated to the levels of adornment. Ultimately, this creates a class of individuals who are metaphorically castrated of their will to power. People are too weak to challenge the systems of oppression and subjugation they are enslaved to, and end up eradicating their individuality to conform with the pseudo-virtues of society.
We're still men.
Yes, we're men. Men is what we are.
Nietzsche asserts in response to this, humans must evolve and establish our own pillars of value and purpose. As Nietzsche writes, must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? It is the individual capable of this feat that Nietzsche comes to dub as the Ubermensch. Quite literally translated as the Superman. The Ubermensch is the ideal person who can rise up above convention virtue and slave morality to create and oppose their own values and purpose. This is Tyler Durden. He does what he wants when he wants, and doesn't care what anyone else thinks. His virtues and purpose are dictated solely by his standards, and he inhabits the strength and courage necessary to do so. His rejection of modernity's purpose and value structures leads him to a life free from nihilism. He has individualized his will to power. In an effort to instill the same sense of power within the narrator, Tyler fights him. This leads to the creation of Fight Club, where disillusioned misfits all come to test and reclaim their strength. Nietzsche argues that individuals without this will to power their own path in life inevitably start to overpower themselves. Individuals who don't have the fight in them to carve out their own purpose will beat themselves up mentally and or physically. The epidemic of depression and mental health nowadays, in a world where the most abundant luxury and comfort humanity has ever seen, speaks to this phenomenon. The weekly fights strengthen and embolden the men to take a harder and firmer stance to the subordinating nature of their world, offering them a chance to push forward their own meaning onto their lives, as seen with the narrator. He stops caring what others think as he smokes in the office, reclaims his dominance, and develops a robust sex drive. He is beginning to cure his nihilism.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Tyler recognizes that one must completely lose their corrupted and phony values in order to begin the process of empowerment. Blowing up the narrator's apartment, forcing him into a house absent of his material possessions, and pushing him to embrace the suffering and pain of life are all actionable steps Tyler uses as the means to flush out any of the narrator's nihilistic value systems and empower him to will his own way through life. The growing popularity of self-help books and videos speaks to the reality that people are looking for change and empowerment in their lives. Constantly on the path of self-transformation, we yearn for the power to mold our lives into fulfilling our fullest potential. The notion that we can undergo radical self-discovery and transformation as depicted by the narrator provides an encouraging and engaging story for the audience. We see someone who successfully rejects the limiting society we find ourselves trapped in and lead a life of true agency. The image of a man free from the disease of nihilism, free from the culture of excess and hyperconsumption, and living however he pleases heavily relates to the part of us longing to power ahead a life of individuality, free from the prism of superficial values. As Fight Club begins to grow, Tyler creates Project Mayhem, an organized effort to, in short, burn society to the ground. Committing routine acts of arson and vandalism, Tyler attempts to fight back against the powers that be. This, however, leads to tensions growing between the narrator and Tyler. The narrator sees Project Mayhem going too far, and feels he is losing touch with his relationship with Tyler. The deterioration of the relationship continues until the pivotal plot twist scene where Tyler reveals he is the narrator. Tyler is merely a projection of the narrator's mind. To analyze this, we turn to Sigmund Freud, one of the fathers of psychoanalysis. Freud most notably theorized that all humans have a three-part psyche at play: the id, our primitive and instinctual part of the mind that contains sexual drives, aggressions, and hidden memories; the superego, which operates as our moral conscience; and the ego, which mediates between the desires of the id and the superego. Think of the id and the superego as the devil and angel on your shoulder, and the ego as your brain deciding which one to listen to. Freud explains that projections are a common act of the subconscious to protect the ego from unacceptable thoughts and impulses often produced by the id. Whenever the id and its associated thoughts and fantasies were deemed unacceptable to the ego repressed them, forcing them into the unconscious where they could only be seen in the disguised and modified form of dreams and neuroticism. The narrator's neuroticism of multiple personality disorder brings rise to Tyler Durden. Tyler represents the narrator's repressed id, the qualities the narrator desires to embody but represses due to his ego.
I look like you want to look, I fuck like you want to fuck, I am smart, capable, and most importantly, I'm free in all the ways that you are not.
The confrontational relationship between the narrator and Tyler represents the battle to free ourselves from the confines of our ego. The tenets of slave morality and nihilism have become the dominant litmus for dictating virtue and purpose in the narrator's mind. Therefore, to become his ultimate self, aka Tyler, he must in a sense destroy his ego's sense of self to adopt this new and improved persona. This speaks to one of the most important points uncovered from Fight Club. Often it is our own ego that stops us from being the person we want to be. The narrator is still clinging on to his former self, acknowledging that him and Tyler are the same person, requires a rejection of his ego's programmed outlook on value, purpose, and virtue. The ego is a very protective entity though, and even through all that him and Tyler have experienced, the narrator still can't fully break free. The finale of the movie, however, represents the final transformation of the narrator. The fight between the narrator and Tyler represents the final battle between the narrator's projection and his ego. The narrator ultimately shoots himself in the mouth to kill himself and Tyler, but he only kills Tyler. This represents the death of the narrator's projection and his acceptance and transformation into the role of Tyler Durden, the Ubermensch of his own life. He has undergone an ego death, and the narrator has finally become enlightened.
People do it every day. They talk to themselves, they see themselves as they'd like to be. They don't have the courage you have to just run with it.
We are all guilty of reveling in the projections of our dream lives, living out our fantasies and aspirations only in our head while accepting our mundane reality, looking for a way to become that person we've always wanted to be. While we may not have a split personality like the narrator, we can relate to having the self-constructed image of an ideal self and aspiring to become that person only to be held back by our own mental blockades. To become your best self isn't just a matter of flipping a switch, however, and for so many of us, that notion is a burdensome one. There's a crisis of stagnation in society where people feel stuck and unable to power that projection of their ideal life into reality. The grips of nihilism are tenacious. The narrator's journey, however, provides an antidote that we very much see possible in our own lives. While the prospect of blowing up bank buildings and creating mass havoc through crime should be out of the question, the concept of having the courage to run with the person you've always wanted to be is an aspiration within the reach for many of us. The story doesn't regurgitate just some bogus thoughts on self-help. The movie offers an alternative perspective, arguing that individuals must strip away their programmed and parasitic psyche. They must destroy their limited conception of self and corrupted value systems instilled to make them obedient and subordinate. They must seek the will to power their lives and affirm their existence via the pursuit of purpose and meaning constructed from their own selves. Eradicating the pain pills of life in the form of hyperconsumption and hedonistic excess offers the opportunity to truly seek life-fulfilling experiences and human-to-human connections that ultimately cure us from our nihilism. We see the narrator live the same limited existence as us. We see the narrator aspire to attain the same strength and character we want. We see the narrator transform. From all this, it's not hard to see why we think the narrator is literally me.